Three, we good. All right, so we're gonna start off. I'll just kick it off. Welcome back. This is Anubix, episode 2, season 1. Pass it to my left, which is go ahead, Mike. You take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Michael Gaucher, and you can find me at my website, michaelgaucher.com, as well as on YouTube. And we're all happy to be here to share insights and, do our thing with you today. And so, yeah, let's have a great time.
Go ahead, sir. Kick it off.
My name's Jesse Bentley, also known as CERD. You can find out my projects on jessebentley.com. A senior systems engineer, and like Michael said, here to talk it out.
Sweet. All right. So the trending topic AI and everything AI, and I think it's kind of hard to like sidestep that. So we might as well just go straight through it and kind of see where it takes us from there. So anything that kind of sticks out to you guys you want to jump into first?
Go ahead, Michael. Your face says you got something you want to say.
I have a lot to say, but I've been watching a video by a gentleman named Brendan Dell. You can find him on YouTube, and he is what you would call a very prolific copywriter. He does copywriting for very affluent clients, and he's been looking at AI in depth, and he's brought to my attention a range of studies, one from Harvard, where it showed that there are some significant issues with AI accuracy, as well as the success of AI projects in general. And then there's a range of studies that you've seen here recently that show that there are at least about 95% of projects involving AI have had some issues in terms of showing ROI. And that goes by the form of, okay, so we have a lot of activity with AI. We can see code being generated through agents. And there's a lot of what companies think is valuable intellectual property being developed, but it's come into question because most of the code that's being generated is what you might call derivative. And it's not really demonstrating real competitive advantage or leaps in innovation. So as a result, the CEOs, executives, and the boards are starting to ask, where's the return on investment? Where is the real productivity gain? There are some gains, such as with maybe customer service chatbots, maybe with generating documentation, maybe transforming text in general. But in terms of actual business process, operational process, we're not really seeing the types of gains where the news headlines will say, oh, somebody created this AI product and it is this next generation thing that we all have to have. We haven't seen killer apps generated by AI, and that concerns me.
I think probably the best way that I've personally seen AI used as far as an enterprise level has been things like log aggregation or transcribing meeting notes. As bad as that sounds, that's actually one of the best uses I've seen where it was accurate anyway. But it's like I was saying the last time and earlier before this started, work has fallen into a AI death trap as billing increases. All of these automated workflows are suddenly starting to cost more and more to the point that it was cheaper to have people doing this manually than automating it.
That takes me back to something that, we used to talk about. You remember the concept of the paperless office? Okay, so we were going to get rid of all these file cabinets, all of this paper, all of this printing, all of this, because it was all going to be digital. We're going to use email. We're going to route everything electronically. We're going to build these dashboards. Well, what happened? The printer industry has surged tremendously since the introduction of the paperless office concept. We all still print. We all still try to have copies of whatever it is that we're wanting to have. And AI is kind of the same thing. It's like, okay, you want to automate through AI, but now you're buying more servers, you're buying more compute, you have more hours on AWS, Azure, or whatever your cloud platform is. And so you're actually starting to go down a sinking hole, a big money pit with much of this. And, I think we're headed towards a reckoning where we might see a surge in, traditional skills in IT, technology, even business.
Interesting. So you think that we'll end up having a gap in employment where the newer generation come in, like from a development standpoint, they were taught some fundamentals, but mostly on how to use AI as a tool for vibe coding. So we're suddenly going to have that gap where those fundamentals are lost. So we could have a real entry level issue.
That's already here. And it's something about human psychology, right? It's like if you don't use it, you lose it. So I've seen this happen with some of the most, what do you call that? The most famous or most visible software developers. You see them on YouTube and social media. The way that they talk about technology is not the same as it was even a year ago or 2 years ago. They have lost their technical mojo, right? So even among the senior developers, right? They have used AI so much that it's already caused skill atrophy. It's almost like the way AI is designed or the way we interact with it, it's almost like a virus. And it's a virus that takes hold of your own cognition. This goes back to something even earlier. You know how when you try to remember something all day, as long as you don't write it down, it stays in your head. I got to pay this bill. I got to go meet this person at a certain time. But as soon as you open up your phone and you make a note or you write it down, it goes away from your brain because now somewhere back in your mind, that information that was so precious to you, it's safe. It's somewhere that you can refer back to. And it's the same way with the AI in a way, where you had to remember data structures and algorithms, and you had to remember different ways, different methodologies for programming. You had to remember different stacks, and you had to remember the intricacies. You have to even remember the workarounds that was not documented. But now that you can just do these prompts and AI can just run through that stuff for you, well, okay, your mind somewhere is saying, okay, I don't need to hold all of that anymore. And it was like Kirk who said, I need my pain, And so that's just what it is, right? And so it's more hope for the senior developers than it is for the juniors who've never had those experiences in the first place. You can pick it back up, but it's going to be a hard road for some people who may have spent so many years by the time we get to that reckoning that we're talking about, where it's like, yeah, they're going to try to get back. It's going to be like Rocky trying to run and get his mojo back so he can fight Drago, right? It's going to be a hard road for some folk, And so that's why when I use AI, I do it like in a very middling kind of way. I'm going to do the code and I'm going to get there and I'm going to do all the little sketching. It's just going to be something that I use like I would have used anyway. Architecture, planning, business analysis, right? So I'm doing all of that stuff at a documentation level anyway, right? But it's not actually building my programs for me. It's helping me get up to the point where the scaffolding is there and then, all right, I'll take it from here.
Well, let me ask you this, because the atrophy, that actually got me there. Do you think long-term access to an LLM will actually hurt people cognitively? They'll lose the ability to think critically?
They have already lost the ability to think critically. And let's just admit, there were still a lot of people that didn't know what critical thinking was to begin with, right? I mean, that's just what it is. And so critical thinking is something that you have to actually and actively study. Now, you can pick up many aspects of critical thinking by osmosis by working in our field, because computers themselves are a construct that was born out of mathematics and rigorous logic. And so your interaction with that at a tangible hands-on level will impart some aspect of it to you, right? Because computers at the end of the day are binary. There's no gray. It's either right or it's wrong. That goes back to the binary aspect. So that cultivates a type of personality that engages with this computational construct that's going to conform in some way to that. But the LLMs now creates a buffer so that you are not faced with so much of the consequences of your direct choices in that situation. So you don't even get to pick up the osmosis part of it. What you're doing is looking at maybe the surface level creative, the surface level design aspect, which is valuable. But even there, because you don't have the grounding in the actual fundamentals, in the actual realities of x86 computer architecture, how does your cache hierarchy work? How does your system bus work? What is the relationship between volatile storage and persistent storage? What is the relationship between the electricity coming out of the socket? How does it manifest through the entire circuitry landscape at the different levels? What is your arithmetic logic unit? What is your math unit? How does that interact with things such as registers and pointers at a very fundamental level? And your best elite software developers, they think at that level, at multiple layers, from the low level to the high level stacks. AI takes all of that away from you, right? So going back to your point, right, you got to have that critical thinking in order to think through those points, and where there are gaps in documentation, because documentation doesn't always document everything, right? And so you have to be experienced enough, you have to be intuitive enough, you have to be engaged enough to say, okay, this is what the documentation told me, this is what my experience has been, this is what I'm trying to do. Let's formulate both the hypotheses and the actual model within our own mind of how we get there where there are gaps. And then that's where your own personal breakthroughs, eureka moments, and aha moments is, I've crossed over, I figured it out, right? And so then that's where you become a stronger senior tech professional, whatever it is, software development, IT, networking, cybersecurity, etc. Right? And so you are not developing those skills with LLMs. They are just simply taking other people's past critical thinking and implanting it into your activity stream. And you're losing out on that learning process.
So in regards to AI, something that I don't really hear a lot about or anything much at all. What do you think the effects are in the gaps between introverts and extroverts as it pertains to AI?
Well, these are classic, whether you realize or not, these are classic questions that I've seen going as far back, in the early parts of my career, right? My early mentors, they actually faced this question in those times. And your question is a form of soft skills versus hard skills, right? So it's like, if you're going to succeed in whatever industry, but even in an engineering community, right, or engineer community, an environment riven with engineers who think more about the machine and the technical process more than they do, let's say, maybe the end users or the business stakeholders, who have different priority, and they have a different social environment that they exist in, right? So it's like, okay, well, I need those hardcore tech people to make my process succeed. So I'm willing to make a sacrifice where it comes to hiring or having people around me who I might find more comfortable as a business leader, right? Where my preference might be to have somebody who can hold conversations, they're more well-rounded, blah, 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 right? If I had to choose one or the other, the hardcore tech person that doesn't have the soft skills, but can make me $1 million, I got to choose that person. But as we built up frameworks, like software development frameworks and cybersecurity frameworks and tool sets, right? They call that streamlined computational methods, where you don't really need to know the hardcore underlying mechanics, right? Because now we've made these user interfaces and these GUIs that allow less skilled people to implement these things. So in exchange for that, now I can bring back personality and select and hire for that, right? So then that is one of the, I guess, attractive aspects of AI for the business world is that, okay, I can get rid of all these geeks and we could still have a tool that can get what the geeks used to do done. And the people driving those tools are the people that are more aligned psychologically, ideologically, and socially with the way that we prefer to operate. And so I think that is a factor in the layoffs that we've seen take place to see if there was an opportunity to recalibrate IT departments and workspaces around those prerogatives.
So I'm curious from a billing perspective where we were talking about like the cost of tokens. I wonder if from a psychological perspective, if someone more extroverted or social, if they're going to give you a more verbose prompt and increase token count versus the more tech savvy person that could get you a more accurate prompt.
Well, I can tell you that it's actually a much sharper spectrum, right? In that scenario, someone who is less technologically developed or technically developed, they are actually going to do one of two prompting scenarios, like you're saying. One is they're going to do a vastly underspecified prompt, and we know from LLM research that once the LLM starts generating incorrect answers in, let's say, a chat stream or even in an agentic workflow, those incorrect responses from the LLM starts to contaminate and pollute the downstream effects.
Snowballs.
Right, it snowballs. So then someone who does not understand, they haven't studied the technical background in LLMs and AI, they're going to double down on that. They're going to sit there and fight the LLM, say, I'm going to get this LLM to do what I want to do, when the smart answer is, you need to start over and reconsider everything, right? So that's one side of that. The other side of that is you're going to have those verbose prompts, but the verbose prompts are going to be from the standpoint of business English. It's going to be this from the standpoint of, okay, strategic wording, strategic desire, where it doesn't have all the right technical parameters that will steer it in the right. So it will look positively misleading at first, where it says, oh, I'm going to tell the AI, I'm going to go in anti-gravity or whatever, and I'm going to say, make me a D2C web front end based on blah, 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 and it's going to generate, and it's going to look good. And it's actually happening in the real world all over the place. But then when you need to maintain that, when you need to tweak it, it starts to fall apart. It starts to degrade. You start to attach production databases to it. It has security vulnerabilities. You now have data breaches. You have injection. People can just break the stuff all day long. You don't know how to deal with that. And so then what ends up happening is now you become a victim as a business person, because those that are selling you that solution, they're pouncing on you, say, oh, we got these forward deployed engineers. We're going to put them in there. They're going to help you with your prompt, blah, 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 blah. But the costs are going to skyrocket. And so now you're back to square one. Guess what? You need the geeks again.
So the primary reason I'm asking this, so I noticed this at Hack SpaceCon this year. A lot of people doing the CTFs, they had Claude Code or ChatGPT pulled up and was copying and pasting into it. And I noticed the few that I actually was watching closely, they weren't generating a prompt. They were just doing like 3 lines back and forth constantly. And that just never is a good idea, because you lose all of your context. You don't assign personas or anything. And that's what made me think of that question specifically. When we start putting technical or non-technical people, when we're actually being billed by tokens.
Nice. I mean, and even to that point, like, do you see an even greater divide when it gets down to, I mean, we all know, like, when individuals who might not come from that tech background. And it's like, hey, I feel this should have been done like yesterday, and they might not really understand what happens under the hood, right? And the processes that need to take place for us to get from A to Z. Do you see a even greater divide when it comes to things like this, with the understanding of, well, now that you're utilizing AI as well, shouldn't it speed up the process, right? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I currently see that every day at work, where more and more people, well, until the last 2 weeks, but where you get assigned a project and the dev team's working on it, and they move the deadline up 2 or 3 weeks on a large project just because, well, you've got AI now. Why isn't this going faster? I mean, that's something that we are actually seeing in the enterprise environments. And I think that's also leading to more and more vulnerabilities being exploited or exploitable, not hardened end products.
Mike, you got anything on that, or anything you want
Well,
to add to that?
I've seen that my entire career,
Okay.
and here's the thing, I don't criticize that because I have been an enabler of that, right? So as a highly talented senior developer who knows the whole stack, where I have so much experience, I could take a 6-month process and literally deliver it in 2 weeks, or in sometimes a couple of days. And that's if I build up a reusable library and infrastructure and I do all the right things. And I'm just adding functionality onto an existing, well curated architecture, right? And sometimes that can be very misleading to executives. I've been in meetings where, an executive would, somebody else would say, hey, we need to develop this thing. And they would and the executive sitting there would look at me side eye. He'd say, do we need to do some architecture? And say it kind of sarcastically, but, was like, is this going to take long? Like, because some projects, they are such a scale in terms of the data that you're dealing with, the level of accuracy that must be there, a service level agreement. Like, yeah, you might deliver some projects in 2 weeks, but some, they take 6 months. They take 6 months because at the end you have to deliver something that's enterprise grade. But the thing of it is, it's that when people go to business school or they are entrepreneurs, they are under pressure with their customers. The customer wants the solution as early as possible. And you can lose that customer if you cannot deliver confidence on timeframes. And so it's one of those things where it snowballs, backwards from the salesperson, because I've spent 10 plus years in sales. And, I see the business aspect of it, and it's very real. And it's rare to have business people that have the type of, not backbone, but just the firmness to be able to, reasonably engage with customers and implementers alike, and, work through that process. Okay, I understand you want this delivered in a faster time frame. Understand what that really costs beyond the capital expenditure, right? It's going to cost in quality. Are you willing to sacrifice that? And if
MVP.
you can have that conversation, then go ahead, Jesse.
Oh, I was just saying MVP, minimum viable product.
Minimal viable product, right? And it's like, that's where you're going to be. And we can try to stage that out. But the problem is that many of us, we just don't have it in us to engage that level of conflict. And we have to become stronger like that, and have those conversations where, it's vital that we fight for our architecture, fight for our budgets, right? And do so in a way that's respectful, but not just lay over. But we have a much larger majority of people, they're going to roll over. And we see that right now. And That's where we have these discrepancies between quality and between what the expectations are from us as engineers. Because as engineers, we respect quality. We respect things that are made very well, and that respect doesn't always translate, downstream to our customers.
How does um how does AI sit with just within regulations? Do you think it's gonna uh, help with that, but then on the same token, kind of like break that down a little bit because now you have individuals who are tasked with GRC work that are kind of leaning on the AI to kind of do 80% of their job, so to speak, right? Because I mean, like that type, if you ever dealt with that type of work, or even just was tasked with looking over a security manual or something like that. It's dry. It's takes forever, but it's something that's necessary. How do you see AI helping and or causing more issues in that vertical?
Well, I'll go first, and while Jesse contemplates this, but I can tell you a couple of things. One is that we've already seen this happen in the legal profession. So about 2 years ago, there was a very famous case that took place. I don't know if it was in Australia or the US, but the lawyers in the case, they argued a certain point of view, right? And the problem was that they used AI to build their case, to build their case information, to cite precedents. The problem was the AI made up precedents that did not exist. So then the judge had to throw out the whole case and had to cite these lawyers who were penalized for doing that, right? And so we've all used Claude, we've used ChatGPT and Google Gemini. We know that even with their larger context windows that they have now versus 2 years ago, they will still skip over certain parts of the content. They're either going to compact the content, they're going to do whatever. So people expect that the AI is going to devour the whole, input. If it's a large input, they expect it's going to devour the whole thing. And you're relying on that complete data set, or its understanding of that complete data set, to materialize in the work that you're doing, where there's going to be many instances. And all it takes is one important one with your client where it has missed key aspects. And then, you're on the hook for that. What do you say? How do you excuse that? And so, that's basically what I would say on that.
So Nippon's actually in a lawsuit with OpenAI right now for that very reason. It's a life insurance company that they used OpenAI to draft their legal complaints and everything, and OpenAI is like, it's just literally a disclaimer saying that this is not a lawyer, this is not advice. So I actually had to look that up because I was reading something about that just a few days ago. So from my experience, I don't know how much it's going to help on the back end for governance. I know that it is helping a lot for end users not in the security field. So something they've done, because I'll have to use work as an example here, because something we've actually spooled up with AI that I think is useful is they created a cyber AI. So if you have security questions, it'll actually give you the ISO for it, and you can actually read the regulations, and then it'll give you layman's terms on what that actually means. I think that's probably better use than people trying to automate the governance side of it. I think that one thing AI is really good at is dumbing things down to your level and then increasing complexity as you need it. So I think when you're outside of the security field, a lot of the terminology, because we love acronyms, might be confusing. And I think that AI being able to explain that to someone who is, like a plant worker, has no idea about technology, that's a great use for it.
Nice. I mean, I think my biggest thing that like I worry off top would be, even like in regards to like 21 CFR or something, right? We all know like there's the written word and then there's interpretation of that said word, right? So like my only issue with this is like how does that, actually drill down, right? When you have this extravagant amount of different interpretations and versions regurgitated in different formats through multiple different AIs at multiple different individuals. How does that like kind of like that old what was that old game when we were kids, like telephone or something, where like you say a word and then when it gets to the last person, it's a totally completely different fucking from what we started with. So like my only main concern is like how does it actually play out,
Uh,
in regards to interpretation.
so enterprise versions of it, it's locked down, so they're not getting access to any of your information for training. And theoretically, unless you're doing manual updates, you shouldn't be pulling anything new from frontier models. So everything's trained locally. We actually have a team that handles that. So that would all be based on how they're tuning it to parse whatever records and documentation that we have set up for it to regurgitate from. So theoretically, as long as the people doing the tuning and everything and fitting behind the scenes are doing their job properly, that should be a consistent output because we're not training on random user data on the internet. Theoretically, that's all theoretical. That's the perfect world scenario.
You got anything, Michael?
No, I totally agree. And, like Jesse was saying, as long as you can get in there and actually fine tune the information correctly, everything is going to work much better. And anyone listening to this, understand that, we have pointed out a lot of aspects of AI that's concerning, but not a single one of us here is actually against AI. We use it. I use it every day.
Yep.
And each of us use it in advanced ways, right? I pioneer AI, or I go into pushing the envelope of AI with Google AI Studio and Gemini, and I use Notebook LM, and I use all three of them at the same time, and I delve into local models. Jesse does what he does with AI at a very detailed and expert level, and Richie uses AI, very proficiently and prolifically, right? So we're not against AI. We're just clear-eyed about it.
AI is fantastic. It's a very good tool. The issues that primarily I have is when people use AI as a replacement. I think AI is a great tool. It is not a replacement for a human. Well, for the most part. There's those niche cases.
So yeah, exactly, right. um a kind of like a sideball here. Have any of you guys heard anything recently in regards to like just some cool shit that's been done with AI? Like, I don't know, somebody standing up something to Jesse, you already look like you have something. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was actually on Hacker News today. So we've got one of the first uses that are publicly documented of someone exploiting a vulnerability, and then post exploitation, they used an LLM and just took everything. They used the LLM and just started piping information into it after they did their initial exploit, and it gave them enough information that they just took it all. I'll
What was
post
that?
that story.
That was today?
Yeah, it was posted 31st.
Nice. Yeah, I gotta take a look at that. That's hilarious.
So I think
Mike, you got anything?
Well, I haven't actually seen anybody do something that I think is legitimately cool or positive with AI in the public, right? So not so much that, right? I know that the things I do with AI is cool and awesome, right? And so, but yeah, but in general, yeah, I think that when we look at the largest organizations, yes, cybersecurity is definitely one of the bright spots. And I am so optimistic about that because I like to see software get owned and get taken down. I mean, I'm just into that because I see it as a Darwinian situation, right? We're just going to get a stronger Linux at the end of the day. The Linux is going to be off the chain, man. I don't know about Windows. Windows has always had hope.
Windows is doomed.
It's doomed, man. It's done. Trustworthy computing just didn't last long enough. But so that's what I am. I'm the most excited about is that, yeah, AI is not giving us like next generation Star Trek level code and all this kind of stuff. But it's certainly taking what we got right now and turning it to ash and making and giving the developers incentive to say, you know what, we need to step up our game in the Linux kernel and get things done well. But and so that's what I look forward on that front. But in terms of actual software development and building new and novel things, that is still, I firmly believe, the purview of the hand coder, the person that is going to innovate, because those answers does not exist in a data set.
Well said. What about you, Richie?
What is that?
Your question. What have you seen that AI has done cool?
Nothing really. Nothing that like grabs my attention, right? Like,
So on the 29th, they also found an issue with ChatGPT drafting phishing emails for people. That was also something that happened this week.
you said on the 29th?
That
I feel
really
like
good phishing emails, by the way.
yeah, some stuff that got like no before it hit, huh? No, I think I saw that a couple days ago, but not 100% sure. But yeah, no, I really haven't seen anything that really caught my attention. Obviously, probably tons of stuff that's being done right now that's super cool. Um, but yeah, nothing that really stands out. Um, I will say the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is just like the realistic enterprise grade uh AI, like on the go, right? Like I know some of the frontier orgs or whatever they give their employees to take home, something like that, right? Jumping on, getting access to something like that and be able to utilize that early on to try to, you know, me personally try to reverse engineer it, and really understand, all that math and everything that goes into it without the instructions. I think that's something cool that I would want to look into. But other than that, yeah, nothing really.
I don't think you can reverse engineer the model itself because there's a transparency layer there that you can't get through. What's
Well,
it
more
called?
more like just the overall process of like, because I mean, even when you're pulling all this stuff down, right? Like, you're not really.
What that's called. I'm having a brain fart moment. When you prompt engineer the AI and it starts spieling it, so you rebuild the model yourself. What is that called?
When it starts what?
You literally prompt engineer it, feed it code, and it starts spitting out so that you can rebuild everything. I'm gonna have to Google it because I'm going brain dead. Why can I not
You're not talking
remember?
about prompt injection, are you?
No.
Are you hallucinating?
Yeah,
Is
but
going
while
off
he's looking that up, more to what you're saying about take home AI, I think that the most likely candidate that might get there first is probably going to be Apple.
Mm.
And the reason I say that is Apple has that deal with Google to have Gemini as the backbone for Siri. Now, when you look at how that developed months ago, it was like, okay, Apple is going to use Google APIs, right, for Siri. So when you talk to Siri, you're really having your conversation with Siri on some level routed to Google data centers via the APIs. All right, and that's fine, right? They have security and all that figured out. But I saw news today where Google is actively working to get their actual model on the phone, right? And so you're probably aware of Gemma, right? The Gemma 4 models, right? So you can that's what I use for my local LLM is Gemma, right? And so Google made Gemma. Gemma is not Gemini. Gemma is a way for you to run Gemini on your own hardware. And if it works out for you, that's great. But then if you get to a point where your use of the local Gemma model requires a cloud-based solution, Google is hoping that then you would actually on-ramp to them. That's kind of the business model behind making Gemma free. But if Google can get that on the actual iPhone, then it's a wrap. So then you'd be able to have pretty much portable LLM model. And I think that's pretty cool because as an app developer, then you would be able to more easily incorporate LLM into your app right there on the device without the latency of cloud interaction, waiting for some prompt or query to come back, right? Because the end user of your app isn't going to sit there and type a prompt. You're automating that, right? And so let's say a customer service app, you're talking to the app, the customer service app, right? And instead of waiting for the cloud to come up with the response to the customer's inquiry, it's instantaneous. You're just having a flowing conversation just like that, right? And so that's what they're working on. And, if Google can get that quantized model to the right level where you don't have too much loss in the resolution, then I think we're going to see some innovation in that way, correlated to what Jesse is saying in terms of those applications where he's seen some positive benefit.
So what I was thinking of, distillation, where you're actually pulling it down and then you use LoRa or a QLoRa to actually fine tune it to work the way you want. I don't know why that just completely left all of my thought process. Yeah. Talk.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
That's all you got?
that just broke my brain. Why I couldn't remember that. I'm here now.
Yeah. What's a junior cert that you would recommend to somebody that not only is like educational, but is actually kind of some fun, like actually taking the test was actual fun, right? Do you have one?
What field?
It doesn't matter, whatever.
Well, I would generally recommend the cloud certifications, like Oracle Cloud or Azure Fundamentals. I think those would be fun for somebody starting out. As you get higher in the certifications, I think they can become a little bit more nerve-wracking for some. But I think an entry-level cert like that, I think they're more fun than, let's say, trying to pursue A+ certification, right? Network Plus might be one that people would consider fun. And let me just talk the elephant in the room. Some people would associate a fun cert with one that's not serious. And it's not true that in this case, that because these certs, they just open up your mind if you haven't really experienced this field. It's not true that they're not serious. They're very serious. But at the same time, they're at a level where it's not so serious that it discourages you, and you can spend more time saying, okay, I'd never thought about it that way. That seems very interesting, right? And so I would say just the entry-level cloud certifications and networking certifications have that flavor to them. I would not say that anything entry-level programming has that same flavor to it.
So my primary issue with like most of the CompTIA or well, the CCNA is no longer feels like an entry level cert because they got rid of CCENT and combined it. So it's just this massive annoying test now. But my issue with most of the CompTIA certs and even some of the entry level cloud ones, I prefer hands-on certs. So like CJCA from Hack the Box or the PJPT, except for I wasn't a huge fan of the support side of the PJPT, but those are two good security certs for hands-on. CJCA even has both red side and blue side, so if you don't know which way you want to go. Security Plus could be an entry-level cert, question mark, but Net Plus is definitely there. There's kind of labs in Net Plus, I guess. It's if you want to like drag the box. I think that's about the closest that gets. I think
All right.
security certs have spoiled me.
Are any of these certs, would you say, to not go for? Like, you feel whether it be like a waste of time, whether it be like, it just wasn't practical. You didn't like it because of that, but like just one, is there any in particular cert that you're just like, I'm good? And you could have took it, you could have not took it or whatever, but just one that you're like, I won't.
I got mine years ago. Kat actually just had to get hers for school. A plus. The A plus is stupidly expensive if you don't have vouchers for it, and you get nothing for it, and it's 2 tests, and the training is awful. It's not even up to date, which that's actually an issue you're going to run into with most CompTIA stuff.
Google Project Management and Google Data Analytics.
I just saw a commercial for the analytics cert on YouTube not long ago.
Was it that bad? Like, I mean, what's up? I gotta hear. I see. I mean, you said PM to start with, so like I already like, but like now I want to know, like, so what was? Did you take it, or did you just like go with materials like this is crap, or like what happened?
So I actively thought about it, because the way it was marketed, it's like it will really clarify, your qualities for the high level stuff. But I saw a couple of problems as I looked at it. Is that some of these certifications, if you get them, right, it marks you a certain way. So let's say you are a true tech professional and you get a project management certification, right? Then there is a case to be made that, okay, are you still on that tech path, or are you are you more now on that management path? And then if you've been a real world manager, you know what real leadership and management fundamentals are, and you know that they're not reflected in some of these certifications. And so when I looked at the Google certifications, I saw it very light on that. So it looked like it was more like a superficial cert that you put on there, so it marks your resume. You look a certain way, but it doesn't really deliver any tangible value. And so the way you manage projects in the real world almost never aligns with PMP or any of these type of certifications that you see out there. So that was the issue with that one. Data analytics seemed like it was just as hollow, right? Because there is this particular path out there called data engineering, where you're actually dealing with big data, you're dealing with data sets and that sort of thing. And this did not seem, based on the curriculum, that it's going to get you along that path. Again, it's giving you way too much of an overview and not enough substance. So that was my criticism, because you're going to spend, a good while in that, and you're just not going to come away with anything as meaningful. So that would be my perspective on that.
So I just learned was I shouldn't have got Project Plus. Hmm. So
But
I'm
that
getting
was
a
one of
data analytics cert. Do you think that's because of like I think they try to separate those into what a data analyst, a data engineer, and then a data scientist?
That is exactly right. That is exactly right. And so there are actual data engineer certs out there, and there's a cert out there that deals with you know data architecture. So I would say those would be more meaningful to get into. They're going to be challenging. There's really no um, gentle on ramp to that, right? So you're either going to be all in or you're not. You're going to be heavy into SQL. You're going to be heavy into R, SAS. You're going to have to deal with statistics. You're going to have to deal with some aspect, if not Terraform or Teradata or something equivalent to that. You're going to get into the deep end quickly, and so I have seen certs out there like that. I have thought about those, but that's not really my path. So even though I have dealt throughout my career with large data sets and large databases, but that's just it for me. That's just an element of the full stack from a software engineering and architecture standpoint. But for someone that really is going to go serious with that, I could see somebody at a larger organization benefiting from having a certification like that.
What about you, Nubix? Because I know that you have several security certs. Go ahead, throw somebody under the bus. Shoot your shot.
you know, I don't know. I would say it would have to probably be a tie between like the A plus and security plus and net plus and believe it or not the PJPT. Um, I just think because like even though the PJPT was a practical, I felt like they could have went a little deeper, right? The good thing it didn't cost too much, but I do think that they could have went a little deeper. Now as in regards to like A plus, security plus, net plus, all that, that's more of just like a preference. I'm not really a big fan of multiple choice. Um, I like to actually physically do what I'm supposed to be doing versus like trying to, regurgitate information that I've held for 4 weeks because I needed to take it for a test or I needed to do it for a test. So I mean, just actually be able to run a command, to know the tool that you're utilizing, to know what flags need to be represented to get the exact result that you want. I mean, those things are crucial. And yeah, sure, you can read them. Yeah, you can write them down and all that. But the real way to memorize all this is literally by doing, from what I've found to work best for me. So yeah, it would be those because they're multiple choice and a PJPT because I feel like they could have went a little bit deeper on the material, both the environment as well as documentation.
Security really spoils you on the hands-on certs. Just coming from just the generic IT background, I was all the multiple choice questions for certs for my entire 20-year career, and then PJPT was my first hands-on cert. It's just like 4 hours. I was done. I was like, this was awesome. And then
And
it took
what's
Yeah,
them like 10 days to get back to me to tell me I passed. Thought
I
I
was just
broke
gonna
something.
say the wait time on it is so crucial. But like the exam itself is like so quick, and then the waiting time it really kills. It really drags. But other than that, I know we're kind of short on time, so as we wrap this up, any last things, anything you guys want to kick around or anything like that?
Where's those crickets at?
Right. Oh, you got to do your plug. 4sec, Heck Myrtle,
Every time.
every time. It's called branding, my guy.
Yeah.
It'll remind you every time.
I was thinking about that football player that was what was it? Skittles. What was the football Skittles? What's his name? Maurice, not Maurice Jones, Drew. What's the other dude's name? Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch, that's Skittles, right? Football player.
I think so.
He said something. I I gotta like look back at the clip, but it was something along the lines of like somebody was asking about some charity stuff that he does back home. He was like, "Yeah, just come out, like, come check it out," you know, like. So that's kind of like where I'm at with it. But again, now Forsec was created to basically bring people on, and kind of teach them more of the understanding that I had when I first went down this path of like, you know, having respect for the Gen 1, the Gen 2 hackers, everybody, you know, that came after that, and just like understanding like what all this means, right? Like when you go to certain places, when you go to you know, DEF CON, and you see certain rituals taking place at that time, you might not really know what that is or what that for or what that means, but like all these little small things have processes, and all these processes have been passed down from year after year, right? So like just making sure that we don't forget that, and staying true to that for the next generation, and you know, again, they'll pass that, and it keeps going and keeps going. And then again, Hack Myrtle, that's a conference that we're going to be throwing out there in Myrtle Beach. So you guys, it'll be like mid-November. Still be nice outside. So you guys, if you ain't doing anything, come check it out. If you are doing something, come check it out. Other than that, anybody got anything?
I think that's the only two things I had you plug. Yeah.
Okay.
Just got to make
cool.
sure you do your own branding.
Yeah,
You just got to remember. You got to remind people that for over 1,000 years, Forsec has defended the galaxy against the dark side.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I love it. I will say this too. Quick thing, because I know we don't really touch a lot on this subject or anything like that, more than we should, I guess. Or we should more, I guess. But what's a good book that you guys can give? It's like something that it can be within cyber, it can whatever, it doesn't really matter, but just a book that you think would help enlighten an individual.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Robert Kiyosaki. Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
It teaches you to think away from the traditional education system. Because the original school system is built to promote a factory worker, whereas, you know, we're past that point in our lives with our evolution. We need to be thinking outside the box. And that book is a good way for you to realize that. Either that or anything by Simon Sinek.
Okay. Mike.
So along those lines, what Jesse was talking about, there's a book that I read that's along those same lines. I wrote a blog post on it and dive deep into that. But it's titled "Excellent Sheep: The Miseducation of the American Elite," right? And you would say, okay, that deals with the American elite. This book is written by a professor by the name of William Deresiewicz. And he goes into extensive detail, more along what Jess was talking about, the Bavarian system, and how, you know, the elite in Bavaria several hundred years ago wanted to design an education system that basically coerced their society to serve the interests of the elite, and how that model got transported over to the broader West and to America, to into the hands of none other than Rockefeller, who said, "I don't want a smart worker," and I'm paraphrasing. I don't, or it was more accurately said, "I don't want a worker that thinks. I want a worker that follows direction." And you know, and And the way to accomplish that is to make sure that the people that work for you have literacy, that they can read. You find a lot more rebellion in the human mind, the less structured it is, the less educated, according to what we call education, exists there, right? And so by having people that are literate at a basic level, they can now read the directions that have been written down and handed to them. They can understand the words that are being spoken to them and work in the assembly line. So there's a plus side to education, but there can be a downside to education as well in how it can conform the mind. And if you don't watch yourself while you're educating yourself and elevating your mentality, you can elevate it right into a very generic soup of ideas and concepts that are easily receptive to things that your true self may not ordinarily receive. So that's one that's related to what Jesse is was referring to. But in terms of our overall conversation, for those that want to go down this path of technology, I would say don't read a technology book first. Where you want to get grounded in is where we started our conversation in the beginning, is critical thinking. And there are some excellent books out there on critical thinking. So I will put this in the context of software development. You could buy books that teach you. There was a publisher that called Sam's back in the day. Sam's, teach yourself Java in 21 days. You can do the modern equivalent of that, right? And you can become proficient. You can go through a boot camp, whatever. And within 2 weeks to 6 weeks, you can spin out a React website. But can you really think through those React components, through that JavaScript? Can you think through the back end? If you start reading literature about cybersecurity vulnerabilities in web stacks, can you really think through that, right? And so there's a key word there, thinking through that. And studying critical thinking will show you how to recognize your own biases, recognize information that has fallacies riven all the way through it, how to actually structure your thoughts so that you go down a much more rigorous path in how you evaluate things, how to detect things that are sensational in hype versus things that have a stronger basis in fact, and how to follow that through. So these are all the aspects of, or all the hallmarks of people that are able to succeed in the technical sciences and in engineering. And so critical thinking would be a way of doing that. And so as far as authors, I would point to Paul and Laura Elder. They have a more accessible version of critical thinking that people can digest. There are more academic works on critical thinking that would challenge most people. I would say guide into that later on. But if you want to just get into there and understand the concept at a very layperson's level, I would start with Paul and Laura Elder's work on critical thinking.
Nice. Mine is not cyber related at all, but it's one of the books that I've always went back to ever since I was a little kid, and every time I reread it or even just reread something within the book, uh, the understanding gets a little bit more deeper, and that's The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Um, and I think it's important that not only you should be reading something, right, but making sure that it's not just cyber stuff, right? Like uh, because the way that you're going to bring unique perspectives that we don't already see or we don't already utilize is by going outside, thinking outside of the box, getting outside of that vertical, seeing it from a different angle. That's why when you start looking at stuff from a purple team perspective, you can see the defensive mechanisms that should have been in place, right? You could actually know how to do that from the blue side on the engineering perspective, like, and then again on the offensive side, right? Like, oh, that vulnerability right there, that might not be a main vulnerability. It might be daisy chained, right? You saw this vulnerability, piggybacked off that, and now you got to here. So being able to just see from different perspectives, and then you can kind of pan out and then take all that in and then bring something new that wasn't there before. So again, I think that's a good starting point, and then kind of go from there. Other than that, uh, anything else, guys? No? Righteous. Well, as always, thanks for coming out. And we'll see you guys again this Friday. All right. Talk to y'all later. Bye.
Thought you were gonna say Harry Potter.